Thank you for tuning in to the Why Marketing Podcast. My guest today is Kyle Lacy, the VP of Marketing over at Lacy. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Glad you're able to join us. So tell us what you got going on over at Lacy and how you got there.
Yeah, so I'll give you a brief overview. Lacy is training software for what we call customer-facing teams. So what happens usually is that you're hired into a sales team, you're onboarded, and then you don't do any type of education after that. And so what we do is we allow sales teams to constantly learn and practice on an ongoing basis. If you think about like a musician or an athlete, they are constantly practicing, constantly. And the idea is that employees should be doing the same thing. So it's whether or not you're practicing pitches or you're practicing your messaging, or you're practicing your speech via video. Lacy is allowing you to empower that, empowering it across thousands of people at scale. And I run all of marketing, which is basically all of top of funnel. So we have outbound sales and we have demand and brand. And I got here through a venture capital firm in Boston called OpenView, where I was VP of marketing, and Lacy was looking for a VP of marketing. So I wanted to get back into the space. I was previously at ExactTarget, which was an email service provider that was acquired by Salesforce in 2014. And I wanted to get back to become an operator. So that's what led me to Lacy. I've been here for 2 years.
Was OpenView one of the investors for Lacy?
Yeah, OpenView was. OpenView did Series A and Series B.
Sounds like it could work for me, practicing on a podcast.
Yeah, it could if you were one user, for sure. Absolutely.
So what is the best strategy that you are going after as far as getting the word out about Lacy?
So we take a lot of different approaches, but the biggest thing is I think a lot of people talk about messaging, like a company's messaging. We talk about it in terms of what's Lacy's voice. So we try to personify the company as much as possible, because that is why we win, is because our story, our message, our values are different than our competitors. It's just the way we talk about it. It's like our competitors will talk about, we decrease churn, we increase productivity because we're great training platforms. We talk about, we exist because we want people to do better work so they can live better lives. It's a completely different type. Now, we decrease churn and we increase productivity, right? But I think that it's more the message, it's the voice of Lacy. I think it's also the approach we take on highly customized direct mail, highly customized experience, like events in locations around the United States and even in Canada, as well as the amount of time and energy we spend on creative and content, and just being, I think the best way to put it is being obsessed with the journey, right? Whether you're a prospect or a customer, you need to make sure that journey is as seamless as possible, because the customer is who controls your destiny, frankly, for any business, right?
Yeah.
I'm preaching to the choir when I say that.
I like the whole point about the journey, because I think it's so true about really when you're talking about that message, what is that journey for all these different companies and what they're doing with their sales teams and how they're training them, because you've got to be able to be a part of that and be able to speak in a way that those clients are going to actually embrace.
Well, and the customer experience is the only thing that makes any of us relevant, right? If it's a broken customer experience, I don't care who you are eventually going to become irrelevant because somebody else is going to be better at it.
When did Lacy launch?
6 years. Yep.
And I saw that, I guess the other night you posted something about Yellowship 19 coming up. I think y'all got Guy Raz. It's going to be a keynote.
Yeah, we got Guy Raz as a keynote. You know, he's the host of How I Built This and TED Radio Hour, which we are pumped about because it's one of the top listened to podcasts. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite. I actually love it.
Yeah, I love it. I'm very excited that we actually got him. So Yellowship's our conference. This is the second year that we will do it. We don't take a user conference approach like a lot of software companies take, where it's a lot of product. It's basically just, how do we get our prospects and customers and employees in one area and room, and how do we get them interacting and learning together so that we can all do better work? And that's the idea.
That's pretty cool. So do you have any of your customers that are going to be actually contributing to that
Yeah, we've got three breakout tracks, and I think it's like 15 speakers each track. And a
Oh,
lot
wow.
of them are our customers. And then we have keynote stage where we'll have panels and we'll have customers presenting. I think we're shooting for 500 attendees.
That'd be a good conference. I actually always like when you actually get the contribution from and having companies be able to hear from their peers.
Yeah.
Collectively,
Yeah.
they start to hear best practices. Oh, this is what I'm doing. Oh, there's similarities and the challenges. So it should be
Well,
pretty.
yeah. I mean, I go to a conference. I don't want to listen to a bunch of consultants, right? I want to talk to. I mean, it's on. Like, I want to talk
Totally.
to other VPs of marketing that are at my stage software because we have no idea what we're doing. None of us do, and so it's like it's like an AA meeting where we're just trying to figure out how to grow.
I was going to say, hey, that's exactly what I was thinking too. It's like everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's got the same challenges, the same issues that they're facing, and whether it's hiring or retaining.
Yeah, and I think that the most important part of all this, and this goes across all industries, is that we all, as we hire people and all of us grow, whether you are Hulu or Lessonly, your main focus as a manager needs to be helping your employees do better work because they will stay with you and they will become more involved and they will love working there. And I think that's the underlying theme across the board, is that how do you get a bunch of people in the room that love doing better work so that we can spread that message?
Well, speaking of spreading the message, I know you're big into storytelling. So how did you kind of make that a big part of what you do?
Oh man, I learned really early on that storytelling was very, very important to me personally, as from a career perspective. I started an agency when I was really young, so 20. And when I say agency, it means we did some logos for small businesses and maybe some brochures. So basically, a design shop is the only thing I was good at the time. So what we found was, as we got better at selling, our story changed and we started getting beat by agencies in Indianapolis because we looked like we had just rolled out of bed, and we were all really young and we had no idea what we were doing. And so we started shifting the story to social, because at the time, this was 2008, at the time, MySpace, Facebook, all these things were starting to take more of an emphasis in the business world. And when I started shifting the story to social, it was like clockwork. Like, we got customers like clockwork because they didn't trust anybody other than this 23-year-old kid who just spoke a big game, told a good story. And through that, I published 3 books through Wiley and Pearson that had to do with storytelling and social. And as my career progressed, I realized that as I built upon my story and I found my voice, that is what was selling me as a professional. And I say this all the time to college students, mostly as they're going out and to start their careers. You have to figure out a way to tell your story that's different. And it's the same thing goes for companies, right? You can't do the whole, we were starting in 1975, we have great customers and we deliver on time, right? Everybody says that. So how do you create a story based off of your experiences that are different? My books are different. The fact that I joined ExactTarget and we IPO'd and were bought by Salesforce is different. The fact that I worked at a venture capital firm is different. And then now that I'm at a Series B venture-backed company, it's different. So how do you build that story? And that story is the one that will get you the job. It's not your resume. And I learned that. I was lucky to learn that really early on.
What do you think probably the top 3 most important parts that people need to know when they're kind of crafting a story?
Oh man. I think the first one is, do not underestimate the value of perception. So a lot of people in general, as you're trying to move up the ladder or accomplish goals or whatever, there's going to have to be some perceived value there. Like when I was selling social, there was perceived value that I knew what I was talking about. And frankly, I didn't, right? But the difference between me being a liar and me delivering is that I worked really hard to deliver what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. So there is some perception. I don't want to say it's not lying. It's just that you are looking forward. Steve Jobs, in the book Jobs, it's an awesome book. Highly recommend anybody read it. He had what was called what the author called a reality distortion field, where he distorted reality to make it seem like what he wanted it to be when it wasn't actually true. Like the iPhone actually becoming something when everybody was telling him that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, why would anybody want to do that? And he said, you know what? It's going to work. And he pushed it through. I'm not saying you go the extreme of Steve Jobs, but there is some perception value there, right? Number one is perception. Number two is make sure that you are listening to your network and building your network. Your perceived value is based off of what other people's perceptions are of you. And if you can figure out what those perceptions are, it's easier for you to tell a story. Same thing applies to a company, right? Your customer's perception is your message. The way that they perceive you as a company, the way that our like US Cellular perceives us as a vendor, they are telling their peers about us. Whatever they're saying is our message. It doesn't matter what I put on the website.
And that's really the way that most people are being influenced by it. I mean, that's the way consumers are buying. Those are big trigger points.
Yeah. And you know that, right? I mean, a lot of it's word of mouth. I don't care what type of marketing campaign you have. If you have advocates and you can help them with the perception and the messaging and the value and the voice, it'll be a lot easier. I think the third one would be make sure you're constantly documenting your story. So I don't care if that's Instagram. I don't care if it's in a journal. I don't care if it's Evernote. I don't care if it's LinkedIn posts or Facebook posts. Make sure you're constantly documenting. So we all get so wrapped up in life that it's hard to remember some of the things that might be really crucial moments that could be good for storytelling. And that has helped me over the last 12 years.
Those are awesome points. What are the best ways companies can get those advocates, to really be out there evangelizing for their businesses? Have you seen things that have worked really well?
I mean, number one, you got to have a good product.
Yeah, that's true.
If you don't
be out there advocating a crappy product.
Yeah, they're not going to have advocates. So have a good product, have good onboarding, make sure everybody likes it, don't screw people over. And then I think at least in software, we have what's called a customer advisory board, where we fly in some of our top customers twice a year to Indianapolis, where they meet with our product team and they meet with the company as a whole. And we get a lot of feedback from them. And if you involve people into the inner workings of the company, they're going to be more likely to be advocates. And
so you try to bring them in and make them feel like they're part of the
because they are,
and they're part of the team.
Absolutely. And if I don't care if you have an accounting firm or a printing press or whatever, you have company meetings, you have board meetings, like bring them in and have them sit in and learn what you're doing and maybe give advice. You don't have to take that advice. Most of the time we do, because our customers are usually smarter than we are, and they will become advocates. It's the same reason why relationship building is important, right? I mean, that's what it is. And you build advocates through relationship building. I don't know another way to do it.
I think it's good. I was just, the advice I think is spot on. So at Leslie, you use a llama, don't y'all? Like a gold llama?
Yep, we have a llama. We have a golden llama.
Now, how did that come about?
So the llama has been around for the last 5 years. It was randomly drawn on a chalk. We're in a schoolhouse. It was randomly drawn on a chalkboard. The founding OGs, the gangsters, the original gangsters of Leslie said, we don't ever want a llama. That's the stupidest thing we've ever heard of. And eventually our director of marketing, which he's now went off and started an agency, he just kind of let it sit, and eventually it became Ollie Llama. And we give a golden llama to an employee of Leslie every quarter where they exhibit the values of Leslie. And our idea came across, like Ben Battaglia, who runs Demand Gen for us, had the random idea, let's buy 50 of these little plastic llamas, spray paint them gold, create a card that describes the llama culture and what we are as a company, and say, hey, send it to 50 prospects and say, give this golden llama to an employee that exhibits these values. And right now we have sent out about 1,100 of them. I've spray painted 1,100 llamas, and we finally, I'm looking because there's a shipment outside my door right now where I'm sitting of 3,000 llamas that we've had spray painted gold, because it worked. And it wasn't what's brilliant about it, which I think if anybody remembers anything from this, it's it worked because it wasn't selling a product. It was selling an idea and the voice of Leslie that makes us different from everybody else. It's like, you know what? You can buy a training and enablement or LMS software. There's 500 of them. Go choose one. They all have the same feature set. But guess what? we care about your people, you care about your people, and that's why we are sending this to you. Give this to somebody who has exhibited values that are beyond the normal person, and then our SDRs follow up, and it's usually highly likely, at least from a conversion standpoint, that we'll get a conversation.
I guess that goes back into telling a good story, right? And now you're also converting them to be advocates internally within their organizations for you.
Yes, absolutely. And
gold llama.
And most of the time it's like, you'll go to, I went to an event in New York about a month ago, and I had 4 or 5 people from 4 or 5 different companies come up and ask to send more golden llamas because people were stealing them off desks. And that you can't buy that. Advertising cannot give that to you. It's like people are asking and sending me emails for more golden llamas, and that I can't pay for that type of marketing.
No, those are happy shipments to send out.
Yeah. Yes,
that's cool.
They're definitely different. We're also lucky that llama is kind of trendy right now. So when that goes down, we're screwed, but we're going to run it as long as we can.
Well, I love the whole advice on the whole storytelling, because I think so critical to success for any marketers or for really anybody. Whether you're selling yourself, your business, you have to have a good story. So I appreciate those points. So, when you really look at your career, did you always know you wanted to go into marketing, or was it just something that happened?
I originally started out in music, like wanting to do music business, but what I wanted to do in music business was make money off of people who could play music. So as I went through school and realized that I didn't want to do the whole become a producer and actually learn any of the music and stuff like that, I started looking at record labels, and then I found out that the record label industry was going under, because that's about the time frame of MySpace Music, and Napster was just getting sued and all that crap. Then I went to the business school, and it was marketing that was always influenced. It always influenced me. I just happened to fall in love with the idea of telling a story, and then I fell even deeper in love with it when I joined software, because it's just a completely different animal on the speed at which you move, how much you got to change, how important it is. And I don't think if software fails and marketing comes extinct because the robots come back, I'll just become a history teacher and retire.
Well, I don't think marketing is going to go away anytime soon, for sure.
No, I don't.
Especially as quickly as everything is changing. It's unbelievable how fast things are evolving and adapting. And, and on that topic, where do you see the future of marketing heading?
I think that it depends on how long we're talking. Everybody talks about AI and machine learning and all this stuff. And I think that's important. And I think that it's going to be business intelligence is going to get smarter. You're going to be able to make better decisions. But I still think it's going to fundamentally come back to the idea that a story is the only thing that's going to sell it. Now, I don't care if it's a robot telling that story or a customer or you, anyone. I just don't think that we can get around the fact that people buy from people. And if they're going to spend money, unless it's a commodity, but still, think about Fiji water or Starbucks. Fiji water is water.
Yep.
And it's $4 more than like Ocean Spring or whatever the hell else you can buy. And then Starbucks, it's not that much better than the coffee I make at home, right?
Yeah. I think some people would probably argue that it's worse.
Yeah, a lot of people would. And there's a coffee shop down the street that I go to that it's even more expensive than Starbucks, and it takes 5 minutes to make because it's a pour over, and there's a whole story behind why pour overs are important. So I think fundamentally human beings, I think you can track this back to the entire history of our species, that story. And we don't need to get too in the weeds here, but when we developed language, story is what was the original purpose of any type of expansion of Homo sapiens or anything. So I think it's fundamental, and it will never change. That's just what marketing is.
Let's switch gears a little bit. And when you look back with everything that you know, what advice would you give your younger self?
This is going to sound terrible, but don't be a dick.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. Like, I think that when I was younger, I did not value the idea of nurturing relationships. I think that I I think that I was constantly trying to evolve and sell and get better. And I forgot the fact that the network around you is the one that actually makes you better. And I figured that out. I was lucky that I had good teachers and mentors, and I figured that out earlier than most. But that's probably what I would say, is that the world doesn't evolve around you. And it's probably the same thing that my father would say if you asked him that question, and my grandfather would say if you asked him that question, right? World doesn't evolve around you. And you need to remember that people are the only thing that's going to make you successful in life in general. And your network is the only thing that matters.
Yeah, well, you heard it here first, people. Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. It's life lessons from Kyle.
I like it. It's I probably have used that several times with my kids over the years.
Yeah,
really?
I've said that too. My son's 3, so it's I don't say it directly to him, but I think it.
I think it's all parents sit there and go, "Gosh, I just hope my kids aren't jerks, and I hope they're good people." And
I know.
Oh, man. So what's next for you? What's next for Leslie, do you see?
Leslie is growing. I mean, that is our mission. We are constantly growing in the market, going up market to sell into more enterprise, and that's a completely different marketing model than if you're to sell into small business or commercial. So that's next, is like, how do you evolve as a company to support Fortune 100? And we are doing that, and we're doing it successfully. So now it's more just about how do you build repeatability and grow it.
So it made me think about something here then. So you've got your marketing strategy pre the Fortune 100, right? Has that messaging and the marketing how has that evolved?
The messaging surprisingly hasn't evolved. It actually is working better in enterprise than it did in commercial.
What do you think that is?
I think it's needed more. I think I think they need more of a human sales approach than what they are used to there are human Oracle salespeople, but Oracle comes in the room. It's a little bit different than if a startup comes in. So I think a more human approach is needed more in enterprise than it is in small business. And the thing that has changed is the sales cycle is just more complex. I don't think we don't have a problem with getting in the door and selling the messaging. It's how the steps necessary to get through procurement, security, and everything that's different than if you're selling a 200-person company. I think that I wouldn't say it's a struggle. It's just different. It's a different beast.
Yeah, it's I've always preferred elephant hunting versus rabbit hunting.
Yeah, I know. Well,
it takes the same amount of energy
into that,
and you get.
I mean, if you think about messaging, and our CEO just wrote a book called Do Better Work, which is a very soft skills approach to being a great leader. Handing that to somebody is almost a better sales tool than us doing like a customer story, because it's different and it's human, and people just need it. And I think it's very, very important for all marketers out there to think, how do you make your story more human? And that is very difficult to do. I'm lucky that it was originally put in place by Max, our CEO and founder, very early on. And now we just have to get it out there. But that's the hardest thing in the world to do, but it's very important to do.
I think it's probably pretty cool, though, too, having the fact that the CEO wrote a book. What was it called? Do Better Work.
If you go, it's dobetter.work.
Obviously ties into the story of what y'all do.
Yeah.
You help companies do a bit more work. So, I definitely love the advice, the storytelling, and why and how storytelling has really been a big part of your career and the success of it. How it relates back to what you are doing at Leslie, but more importantly, the advice of don't be a dick. So, but no, that actually now then takes us to the end of this show. So, Kyle, I definitely appreciate you being on the show and taking some time out to share your great story and advice for everyone.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.